Hi, my name is Leo Lowe. I'm the Dean of the Libraries at the University of New Mexico. So very nice to see you all. We have Niamh McGuigan from Brown University here and Oren Beit-Arie from Clarivate with us. So we are going to talk about AI literacy today from three kind of different perspectives. So I will start with kind of a more of a conceptual framework. We think about, what is AI literacy? So I'm been working on a framework, so I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. And then Niamh would talk about AI literacy as a community practice at Brown University, more of on the ground level. And Oren would talk about, from a developer's perspective, it's a new thing, it's a new technology. How do you build AI literacy into the software? How do you incorporate that into software development? So three different perspectives. Now, by now, everybody has heard of AI literacy. It's everywhere. I think very soon after ChatGPT came out, when it disrupted kind of education, the Department of Education put out a report saying that, hey, all educators should be AI literate. And then EU AI Act talked about it's a requirement actually for companies that if you provide AI services or if you use AI in your companies, your employees have to be AI literate. And then different states, including mine, legislators are talking about, incorporating AI literacy into the curricula. But what is AI literacy? They all have very different meanings. I think for the most part, when people think about AI literacy, they think about using AI or how to, the technical aspect of it. I think that's obviously very important, but I like to think of it in a more kind of holistic way. I think it should be more than that, because if we think of it just like that, all the trainings will be just about that. I think it needs to be more than that if we want to incorporate that into our curriculum and in our work. So I have been working on a framework for what is AI literacy. If I have to define it, I think AI literacy is the ability to understand, use, think critically about AI technologies and their impact on society, ethics, and everyday life. So that's a lot of stuff there, right? If we think about in the future, if we believe that the future is all going to be AI embedded, I think there are a lot of things that we need to think about and be knowledgeable about. So I identify 5 key components. One, obviously, technical knowledge is really important. We don't need to be computer scientists, but we should know a little bit about the mechanism behind, a generative AI or large language model, that it is a statistical program. It is predicting the next tokens or the next word. Just knowing that will let people know that, hey, it's not thinking the way we think, and why things happen the way they happen. And with a new technology, there are going to be ethical questions. I mean, we see a lot of the immediate runs already: copyright, data privacy, biases, all of that. But there will be new ones coming up. There will be many, many new ones. So we need to be have that mindset to be ethically aware, and critical thinking. This is the part I think the library world is most aligned with, in that how do we critically think about using these tools, technologies? How do we evaluate the output? Information literacy is very aligned with that, to teach people how to verify information, inaccuracies. And also, how do we make sure that, if we're in an educational institution, how do we help develop that kind of teaching so that our students can still develop critical thinking instead of having the technology replace that for them. And then practical use, there will be many applications of the technology in almost everything you can think of. How do we use it well? As developers develop softwares, and we think about incorporating that into our organizations. How do we evaluate that? And then finally, societal impact. There will be a lot of long-term implications of using this technology. Just like the internet, just like the social media, it will take years for us to feel or see the impact. And we should start thinking about that with this technology. Like, the most immediate one, job displacement, for example. environmental impact. These are some of the things that we should pay attention to. But if you look at all these 5 different components, you can see that no one person can be an expert in all of that. So that means that for us, for libraries, for IT, we need to, and because we work with everybody, in our organization, we could be the proactive leaders in bringing all these experts together to develop these things. So today, I'm just going to talk about one of those, and how do we know that we are AI literate in this kind of practical use component. So for each component, it's slightly different for people in different worlds. For us in a higher ed, in academia, I see these are the 4 levels that we should think about. Tool awareness, basic implementation, integration, and strategic implementation. So level 1, just the basic level, I think we should be able to identify common AI applications when AI is being used, like voice assistants, chatbot, like when we do a Google search now, that you see an AI summary at the top, that knowing that is AI versus just regular search, and understand the limitations of these things. So if we develop training programs, these are some of the key activities to guide people to explore different everyday AI tools and discussions on when traditional methods may still be preferable. Level 2, using it, just basic usage, and then compare using AI versus not using AI. And that way we can understand a little bit more about the benefits and drawbacks of it. And if we use it in a class or teaching activity, hands-on tutorials, and then compare, using AI versus not using AI. If we go up a little bit more, I think we are kind of getting to that level where we try to incorporate AI tools into our existing workflows. How do we make sure that it is doing what we want it to do for us? And how do we make sure that we work like a human AI collaboration and still make it work? So some key activities, you can do some workflow mapping, redesign exercises, can look at some case studies and see how successful cases where people have actually integrated AI into some of these tasks. And then finally, we get to the more big picture kind of view of it. How do we develop criteria for making AI adoption decisions at an organizational level? We want to think about the long term and balance strategies for AI integration and think of ways to measure and evaluate the success of these AI implementations. Some organizations are already thinking about that, but for the most part, I don't think we are quite there. So we need to start thinking about that to get to that level. So benchmarking, how do we know at which levels we are at, basically? So I have developed these. For level 1, the basic stuff is that we can identify common AI tools and understand their basic functions. And 2, we can operate at that with maybe some guided support, compares outputs with manual methods. And I think we're between 2 and 3, integrating AI into workflows and adapt output contextually. And finally, if we do that a little bit more, maybe we can develop strategic frameworks for AI adoption and then kind of evaluate the success. So that's kind of the framework I've been working on. So here's the kind of working paper as a preprint. Feel free to take a look at it. And I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm still working on it. But some key takeaways is that I think that we do need a universal framework to provide a more structured pathway from really basic awareness to strategic implementation. And we talk about the practical use because of today's themes of product development and then come on the ground. It hopefully outlines a clear enough learning outcomes and activities to apply AI tools effectively. And I do think we need to think about the assessment of it too. Where are we in terms of our AI literacy level. So that's kind of the framework I've been working on. I'm going to pass it on to Niamh for her work at Brown University.
All right. Maybe I'll fit this right here. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Niamh McGuigan. I'm the Director for Library Exploration and Research at Brown University. And I'm going to speak about AI literacy in the context of a program we've been running at Brown for the last 2 years, the Critical AI Learning Community. Okay, great. So several of us in the library formed this group in fall 2023, and this was an attempt to engage with library users to understand how they were using AI and to build our knowledge together as a group. We were hoping that we might get 10 or 12 people to sign up, and we were shocked when 75 people registered for the first meeting. So this has grown into a weekly discussion group that's facilitated by library staff, but with very active participation from students, faculty, and staff across the university. And our members help choose the topics that we address, and sometimes they lead the discussions or give presentations. We cover topics that are very closely tied to research and learning, but also address societal implications of AI, such as surveillance or AI safety. To date, over 300 people at Brown have registered for this group, and between 30 and 50 people show up for our meetings each week. And this is definitely the most fun I have ever had at work. So there's just so much really interesting and important work that's going on around defining and understanding comprehensive frameworks for AI literacy, especially some of the work that Leo just shared with us. So I'm going to focus on 3 themes that have emerged from this work that I think can inform or provide nuance for some of these broader efforts. And that's affective dimensions of information literacy, critical evaluation, and institutional literacy. So in our registration form for this group, we asked people what they're most interested in learning about. And by far, the most common response is, I want to know what other people at Brown are doing and thinking. And when we had our first meeting, we had some activities to get people talking about how they're feeling about AI. And we realized that just simply giving people that space to talk to others about how they're feeling is really, really important. And over again, people have shared with us that they value having a chance to share and think their perspectives and feelings on AI with others, sometimes changing their opinion because they've had those conversations that are really open. So observing these interactions has really driven home the point that we need to intentionally engage with these affective dimensions of AI literacy. And these affective aspects of IL are important in so many contexts, but I think this is really important today because there are a lot of concerns and fears that many people experience in relation to AI. So this is just one example. Susan Gonzalez has pointed out that this fear can be a barrier to exploring AI. So AI literacy efforts should engage those fears directly. And I think in some ways this is not too far from other forms of library anxiety, which we have a lot of experience with. But there are also ways in which these affective dimensions have a unique importance for AI. Just one example is that we say the AI tools are often built with anthropomorphized characteristics. And a lot of the recent human-computer interaction research, it shows that people are more likely to trust systems that sound and feel like humans. So these human-like qualities in information systems are not bad, but they will change the way that we think about evaluating accuracy and authority. As these features become more typical, it will become even more important for librarians and educators to engage with the psychological and emotional responses that people experience when they use AI to interact with information. Another theme that emerged from our work is critical evaluation. So teaching how to use AI is tricky because the technology changes so quickly. So we place a lot of weight on helping our members develop their skills for evaluating AI. So one member of our team, Jason Serrato, he developed this evaluation framework which asks people to consider technology at 3 different levels. So one, at the tool level. How well does the tool work? Do you know what it's for? How does it feel to use it? Is it easy to use? At another level, think about the use context. How well does it work for a specific use case? Just because ChatGPT was good over here for one project, is it still good over here for a different project? And then the third level is to think about a social and historical evaluation. So what are the social inputs of this technology? How will it change our culture? How will it change our society? And then here are just some of the sort of like sample questions that we encourage people to use in this evaluation. And this is meant to be kind of quick and simple. We want this to become almost a reflex. So we share this framework over and over again in most of our meetings. We'll take a minute to go over the framework, encourage people to use it. And we're really seeing that our members are adopting this language as kind of a shorthand, which is really exciting. And our librarians use it in their instruction. And then I bring it to work on campus committees on AI as well. So these critical approaches to information literacy is not new, but it's definitely not something that every librarian has in their toolkit. So as we think about these critical approaches, it's important to think about what role that has as we think about AI literacy. So then the last theme I'll touch on is institutional literacy. I mentioned fears a minute ago, and one of the fears that comes up among our group a lot is, how do I use AI without causing unintentional harm? That's a big concern for people. In addition to just kind of like the big concerns about AI in society, people in our community are concerned about fair treatment of students. They're concerned about the impact of bias in systems. They're worried about privacy and surveillance, the impact of irresponsible research practices, and theft of intellectual property. So one approach that we took to thinking about the potential for harm was to examine the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which was issued by the OSTP in 2022. And we thought maybe one approach to exploring these ethical and social dimensions is to identify how would you avoid violating these theoretical rights for others. So for example, the first right in the blueprint is you should be protected from unsafe or ineffective systems. So we asked our group, how would we as individuals and as an institution hold ourselves accountable to this? And if we can hold ourselves accountable for this, maybe that's part of being AI literate. So how would we make sure that we're protecting others in our sphere of influence from unsafe or ineffective systems? And exploring down this road, we started to realize that across the institution, not many people have a lot of knowledge about the technology that we use in the course of our work, just that everyday technology. How are certain tools and platforms adopted? How are they evaluated? How are decision makers testing new AI integrations? Just as an example, in the library, when we make a new AI-driven research tool available, how can researchers feel confident about the quality of the output, the data protections in place, or the influence of bias? What do researchers need to know about our processes in the library in order to build that confidence? So this is an example of a brainstorming activity where, as we thought through the AI Bill of Rights, members of our group recognized that in order to understand if a system is safe or effective, they may need to learn more by engaging with the vendor of that technology, or they may need to engage with processes at Brown for how we manage educational technology. So recognizing this, some of our time has been devoted to learning about different units on campus, sort of moving away from AI, but thinking about our campus context. So we've been thinking about how groups are evaluating and make decisions about technology, working with groups like the Office of Student Conduct, the Teaching and Learning Center, Campus IT, and Campus Safety. And we recently partnered with our High Performance Computing Division to convene a group to demo and test a new AI transcription tool that the center is developing. So this is great because for a lot of people, this was their first time engaging with high performance computing at Brown. Some of them, they're like, I'm a historian, what do I need to do? But so this is kind of opening up these new pathways that will become important for research. But in particular, we heard from the high performance computing team that researchers are nervous about trusting AI for their use in their research. So that computing team, they were looking for opportunities to be transparent, to document and share their processes and decisions so that they can build trust on campus for what they're building. So the complexity of AI technology, I think it reinforces the idea that many people in the university, instructors, but also librarians, students, and other staff, would benefit from that deeper understanding of the work that goes into adopting and deploying technology on our campuses. And they should be encouraged to engage and influence that work. This echoes Stuart Selber, who's encouraged writing instructors specifically to develop institutional literacy to better engage with ed tech on their campuses. And I think this is important for us in libraries for many levels. For one, libraries are often highly trusted organizations on our campuses, and we're well positioned to play that convening role to bring together different stakeholders in the research, teaching, and learning ecosystem. But also we're part of that system, and we can be that bridge between our researchers, students, and colleagues, and the publishers and vendors that we work with, so we're able to ensure that the research tools and technologies that we're adopting and teaching in our libraries are meeting the needs of our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Oren, who's going to talk about some of this.
Thank you, Niamh. Leo and Niamh discussed AI competencies and the skills that development of skills for effective and responsible use of AI. And as a developer, our role is somewhat complementary in the sense that the goal is to build and integrate and develop AI into solutions in a way that supports and promotes responsible and effective use of AI in scholarly context, in a way that enriches and augments rather than replaces the research and learning processes. So, and of course, we need to do that while meeting users' expectations for convenience, for fast, frictionless, integrated into their workflow, experience. So from a product's perspective, the objective is to embed and reinforce information literacy principle in general, and including AI literacy principles in how the product is designed, in how the product is functioning. And the approach we're taking, that AI literacy in product design is about prompting or nudging users to seek and apply academic rigor. So we're talking about, deep reading, critical thinking, follow ethical academic processes. And doing that by providing means and tools for users to explore, to validate, and to evaluate the work that they're doing. So these are kind of the principles that we've been working with and the objectives. In the past year and a year and a half, working with AI, and particularly Gen AI. I mean, AI been around for a long time, but I think the real game changer, as we all know, came with introduction and the ubiquitousness of Gen AI tools. So what we learned, there are really some key components that we believe are part of that and can help with that. And I would like to kind of mention them briefly. We're kind of rushing through our notes to leave enough time for questions. The components that I would like to highlight and, provide some examples for are transparency. This is about really showing, highlighting the sources that drive AI activity and, the results that come from AI, enabling the users and give them easy tools to validate those sources and certainly to cite them. And to do that in context, and I'll show you in a moment what I mean by that. Explainability, another key component. This is about really giving them, information about what's going on, and particularly when it comes to discovery. So giving them easy way to review kind of the research strategy, adapt it if necessary, and evaluate it, which I think can feed into a better chance of being able to reproduce, which is a tough one, reproduction. Trusted. Trust in output of AI starts with trust in the input into AI. And we are using technologies such as RAG, some of you will know, retrieval augmented generation, to really ground outputs of AI in vetted scholarly content. And a lot of that is also about prompt engineering. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about it later. I think it also is an important AI skill that we all need to develop. And the fourth component is about, the prompting the user and making it easy for them to actually go deeper and engage in a more critical thinking process around solutions that are, presented by AI. One core theme I just want to kind of emphasize is, there is a term, the human in the loop in machine learning and AI. I think we're thinking about this not just in the loop, but really in control of the input, in control of the output, and increasingly in control of the process itself. How do results are getting computed? I'll talk a little bit about that through an example in a moment. So let me give you just a few scattered examples. This is really just to kind of get a sense of how things are integrated. And fortunately, I don't think you can see a lot on the screen here. The text is small, but what you're seeing here is a research assistant in Web of Science, one of our products, that offers conversational discovery. So a chat-based question and answer type of interface. And one of the things that we're offering in this interface is there's a button there that users, and it turns out many do, click to see, how are these results generated. So it gives insights into how, the process of translating the natural language interface into result, how it is being deployed by the product. In this case, it shows the search strategy. Another aspect, and I think this also is part of what we're seeing in kind of developing, and Leo, in your framework, is the ability to evaluate the use of AI and also compare it to more traditional means. This is an example for another product. This is Primo Research Assistant, alongside the conversational discovery element that uses AI. There is an option for the user, it's there on the right-hand side, to actually flip very easily into traditional search and actually compare those. So giving them the tools to look at the search strategy that is developed by the AI, but also to control it more by adapting it and going down a more traditional path. I want to mention AI agents. I hope, I assume many here heard the term. Agents became kind of the talk of the AI world starting about a year ago. I think AI agents are very important and probably deserve another whole conversation, if not a conference, because AI agents really take kind of the more traditional Gen AI implementation in products of a chat or natural language type of a conversation, more of a transactional of a question and an answer, into really end-to-end tasks, complex multi-steps tasks, which I think also presents great opportunity when it comes to AI literature, AI literacy. AI agents, this is an example of literature review agent, takes the user through steps in enabling them to create a comprehensive literature review. So the user here is asking the agent to create a detailed literature review in a specific research topic. And it's not that the agent now spits out a literature review. What's going on here is a process. The agent, for example, will ask the user, here's the strategy of the research, the literature review. Do you want to edit it? Or, in this case, it points out that the subject is pretty broad. Do they want to narrow it a little bit? And we'll take the user through steps. During those steps, the user is very aware of what is going on. So I think agents in general provide more means to really emphasize and reiterate AI literacy. Just very quickly, a couple of other quick examples. I mentioned context earlier. This is a different example of use of AI that is actually associated with reading. I'll give you two examples of that. One is based on a full, kind of text of a journal article. What you see on the right-hand side is an AI that helps user identify themes, findings, methods, conclusions in the document. But it does that in a way that points the user, not only cites resources, and you couldn't see in the previous slides, citations is always offered to the user when we implement it. in the discovery, conversational discovery. Here, it's about analysis of a document and giving the user citations that are shown in context, so down to the level of the paragraph from where the AI took, for example, one of the suggested key findings here. So this is something that actually we see quite significant impact measured by returning usage. We're seeing a significant increase in returning users with this feature. So lastly, just say a word here. This is another example of reading assistant where AI is used in relation to course reading assignments. What you see here is the professor assignments on the left-hand side, the reading in the center, and users, kind of reading the required reading in this case, start marking up and tagging elements in the document based on the questions or the assignment of the professor. The academic coach in this case pops in here and offers kind of a reverse take on what most AI does in the chat fashion, and that is where the user asks questions and the system responds with an answer. Here it actually flips that script. The AI is used actually to help the user by asking the user questions about their work so far that really drives a more engaged and deeper reading and a more critical reading by the user. So there's other examples, but we don't have time. I just wanted to end that part and leave time for questions by just mentioning that in a joint program with ACRL Choice, we're launching a program of micro courses in AI literacy, covering a range of, from introductory to more advanced, really, designed for institutions and libraries to adapt, and, kind of use in their context for their needs. This is an 8-week asynchronous learning model that will be launched in August, I think, or July, summer. And just want to put a plug to this, and for those of you who may be interested in kind of the curriculum, maybe helping guide the curriculum, we'll definitely work with, with the ACRL competencies framework. But if there's any interest, come talk to us. So with that, I'll open the stage for questions.
Thank you.
Yes, right. Thanks all. Great presentation. Scott Walters, San Diego State University. So you've given us a couple of the sort of use cases as people develop AI literacy on various campus programs. I think it's many of us are familiar with teaching related and library related. I have a question about something I haven't heard. I'm interested if it's happening in your awareness. The last presentation talked about AI use not as a search assistant, but as a writing assistant, and part of that process. Is there a discussion going on, and I just don't know, within the community of writing centers, writing instructors, math stats, all of the learning support services, many of which we house in our libraries, that are also going through these discussions? Is that a connection that I simply haven't made yet?
Sure, yeah, I can start. Absolutely. I think that maybe the arrival of ChatGPT was more shocking and disturbing for writing and teaching and learning folks, maybe even than for librarians. I think one thing I'll point to is 4C's, the College Council on Composition. Their work that they're doing on AI literacy is really impressive. It's a big framework. So sit down to read, but it covers a lot of ground, and I think they're doing some really, really interesting work. I will say, in our own campus, I think we have a lot of collaboration with our writing center, but maybe some differences in perspective, and maybe the libraries has felt a little bit more just like willing to experiment. I think maybe a lot of us feel like we've kind of felt sort of like disruptive things like this a lot. And so I can't speak to writing centers or teaching and learning folks to the same degree, but there's a sense I have is that we're a little bit more like, let's just ride with it, see where this goes. And so there's a lot of collaboration where we work together on learning modules, and we're forming a pedagogy committee with them. But I would say that it feels sort of like there's a little bit more comfort around like the messy exploration in the library at this moment. But that's just like one experience.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. And that's a big question because, as you mentioned, the first disruption was just teaching and learning. You can write papers, you can do math now. So what are we supposed to teach students, or what are they supposed to learn? And I think in the short run, we're trying to explore and try to do some short-term fixes, and it's messy. But long term, I think there's a general consensus that teaching and learning and assessment have to change, have to transform. At ACRL just now, I did another session. I put a picture with horses and cars and trams on the same road at the same time. It's very messy, but I think we're in that transitional period where everybody's confused and frustrated and don't know which rules to follow. If we believe that AI is like cars, that's going to be the future, then we need to think about how do we prepare the next generation to think about writing. We've been using writing as a proxy for thinking and demonstrating knowledge. Is that still going to be the case? That's a huge question. I don't know. And that's what this messy short-term kind of exploration hopefully can figure out. And the more people get in and engage with it, the more ideas we'll have, and we can hopefully come up with a better solution for that.
I just want to add one more thing, actually. I've talked to a lot of librarians in the last couple of years, of course, about AI at their campuses. And in many cases, the library feels kind of shut out of conversations. And that's true for a lot of folks who are working in other staff roles or writing instructors. There's a lot of people who are very, very close to this work on the ground who are not part of those conversations. And so I do think that there is so much to be gained by engaging with those groups across the campus. What do librarians and writing instructors and teaching and learning staff and learning designers, they have a lot in common right now. And we found that the academic staff has been one of our biggest audiences in the library because they have so much to share and they're not being engaged.
I just add one comment. I think one of the things, well, first of all, I can attest that indeed very few libraries seems to be involved in this, based on our experience. But one of the things that I'll just mention, since most students use Gen AI one way or another, whether they tell or not, whether it's detected or not, I think one of the things that we have great opportunity is actually to emphasize what would be the value of using tools that are supported by the library. And we need to, think very hard if there is a value that we can add, and if so, be very articulate about what is that value.
Okay, Karim Bogitas, Stony Brook. It's more of a comment. Fortunately, the AI Bill of Rights is dead. And I'm not sure, in terms of future examples, how we can show the regulation in the US is down. It's going down, really. There's a deregulation. By the way, at 5:30, we have an open forum to talk about the new administration this year and its impact on our activities. And maybe now we need to kind of show the rest of the world, EU, Canada, in terms of frameworks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And although it may be dead, but I think it still has a lot of value as a pedagogical tool.
Hi, thanks for this presentation. That was great, by the way. I have a question kind of about a tension that I'm seeing between what we're looking for from the academic side and then what a lot of vendors are providing. In particular, when we talk about transparency and we ask for transparency, we want folks to understand how these systems are built. Often when we ask our vendors whether they'll publish their system prompts, the immediate answer is no, that's proprietary. And I'm unclear how we're supposed to educate users of these systems what's happening if we can't even showcase what the system prompt is.
So, I think when we talk about transparency, we need to understand what is the level of transparency that we can get into. and, define whether this is, what does it mean? I think we can get into quite a bit of transparency in terms of how it is used. I think we can get into transparency in terms of what are the sources used. So again, grounding is an important component, but it's not the only one. I think prompt engineering is another very important component. What is done in the background? How do you translate that search, on those sources into the prompt that is used? And I think that, again, going into the agentic framework for, if it makes sense, I think that, you can get a lot deeper into, kind of the reasoning that went into the production of the outputs. That's the level of transparency I think that we're trying to capture. Now, is this good enough? Is this going to, help us, to do what you're saying? I'm not sure, but I think this is the kind of the base level. There will be a time, I think, we'll also need to talk about which, models are we using. I think there is a lot of opaqueness about that, certainly for end users. And that's a particularly important one because, you might change using a different LLM, impact on reproducibility, for example, is going to be tremendous. Now, in fact, this is already true within an existing LLM as they're being trained. Last point I'll just make, we talk a lot about AI literacy for the users, for researchers. We're going through the same process at the vendor. We're developing AI literacy, for example, quality control. How do you test AI? That's a whole new profession that needs to be taught.
Hi, my name is Lin Chen from Virginia Tech. I just have a question. I think right now, AI literacy talk about how to interact with generative AI, right? So I think prompt engineering, as you mentioned, is very important. So do you think about I think librarian is right now prompt engineering is a required skill for librarian in order to not just for themselves and also for them to understand this technique and to serve their communities. Yeah.
So thinking about whether prompt engineering is a skill librarians need to develop, I have an answer, but I want you to go first. Yeah.
I think at this point it's still useful, but in the future its usefulness may diminish. So what's going to take its place? I'm not quite sure, but right now I think it's still useful. So how long would that last? I don't know. So it's still a good way to engage with AI tools at this point.
Yeah, same. But yeah, no, I mean, I think this is what's so challenging right now is that the base skill level changes so quickly. I had an example that I took out for time where we spent a long time in this group learning about personas for prompting, and we're how can we use personas to get different kinds of information? And now everyone's saying, personas, that's old news. We don't really need those anymore. So, I feel that was really valuable because it helped us develop a lot of understanding about how the tool works. And I think that's what this moment is really important for. And so developing skills that you're going to throw away 2 months later can feel frustrating. But I think that developing those skills are actually going to really serve us in the long run because the tools will become harder and harder and harder to understand. So building that knowledge now while they're still in flux and changing helps us sort of understand what's going to later be maybe part of a black box. So I think it's important partly for the learning, even if it's something that we're not going to do in 2 years.
All right. Thank you very much.